So, I'll call the meeting of tonight's Board of Selectmen to order, and we will begin tonight's meeting by acknowledging Frankie Hurst and Anuvid Iyer, who are here. They are recent Eagle Scout.
Pledge.
Yes, but they are coming to give the pledge.
Oh, sorry.
So that's why I don't know if Frankie, I don't see Frankie, and I don't know if Anuvid is here. I guess they're not. However, the show must go on, and so we will start the meeting then with our pledge. We can rise to do such. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And so our last meeting was July 18th, 2017. Yeah, it's been quite the break. We have in our packet the minutes from that meeting. Do I hear a motion to accept those minutes, or?
Chair, will we accept the minutes from July 18, 2017 open session as written?
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? You know what? That's okay. We should.
Let's do it again.
You know what? We will absolutely do that. There's a motion on the table, so let's, motion made and seconded. Again, are we all set with the minutes? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, minutes pass. So Anuvid, how are you? So we did just do our Pledge of Allegiance, but I would be willing to do it again, and I think everyone in this room would. I don't know if Frankie was coming, though, as well.
He can't make it today.
That's perfect, then that, we can do it right now. So if you wouldn't mind approaching the podium, Anuvid, because we'd love to have you lead us in this. And we will let you do the Pledge of Allegiance. Let's rise one more time. So,
First was practice.
yeah.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for that. And actually, Anuvid, you don't have to go running away. So it was perfect timing. I know it's we really wanted to recognize you because we've had Frankie attend. I think it was last September he came, and I know Kim Hurst spoke really fondly of you and the project that you did for the Mazarenko property. And so we wanted to invite you to the meeting this evening and talk a little bit about the project that you did and let the community at home, because you are on camera, and the folks gathered here today as well as the board know more about what you had done. So let us know how'd it go.
Somebody's here. Do they need to come in?
those are my parents. I mean,
have them come in.
So should we do it a third time? Listen, this is all for you guys. It's not for him. He doesn't care. So yeah, tell us about your project.
yeah, so basically I built a small stream crossing at the Mazarenko Conservation Area. So it was, I approached the Friends of North Andover trails, and Mr. Glenn Speslag helped me out look around for a project. And eventually we found a stream crossing over the trails, which without the bridge was really tough to go over. Like, we saw a lot of like muck prints of just people getting stuck in there. So I saw that and I decided, this is a good idea for me to build like a small bridge over. So over a course of about, let's say, 4 or 5 months, I planned out about a 20-foot long boardwalk bridge, and it spanned over that area. And just this spring, I went out there and saw that there was actually flowing water underneath it, and the bridge was stable, and it was going over the water. Really nice.
Well, thank you for doing that for us. So actually, the board was grateful for your contribution and giving back, using your project as a way to give back to our town. And so we prepared this recognition for you. So right here is a certificate of recognition presented to Anuvid this evening in recognition of completing your Eagle Scout project by designing, constructing, and installing a boardwalk bog bridge, donating it to the town for the use at Mazarenko Farm. Your leadership, dedication, and hard work in making this improvement to the Mazarenko Farm Trail are greatly appreciated. Thank you for your community service, and on behalf of the town of North Andover, presented this
go. Let's get a picture. Let's get a picture.
Hold it up.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. That was one recognition, but we do have a second, I think, another important recognition of the contribution young people especially make to our community. And so this evening we actually invited the Youth and Recreation Department staff here to talk about the summer program that happened at Drummond and Atkinson, correct? Those two locations. So we have Rick Gorman, who's the director of the program, here this evening. And we invited the staff because they just wrapped up a 7-week-long season of amazing service to the parents and students and kids of North Andover. So I don't know if Mr. Gorman, you want to approach the podium and talk a little bit about that
Sure.
program?
So we're wrapping up this Sunday the majority of our summer programs with the closing of the pond on Sunday. We do have a number of programs still going on this week. I think Chairman's talking about the very popular Summer Fun and Sports and Rec program, which ran for 7 weeks. It was a total of around 600 kids, and it was definitely our best summer we've ever had. So besides the Summer Fun and Sports and Rec program, we also ran the Joe Walsh Summer League, which has been going on for 27 years now. The pond has had a great year. We got one more water test tomorrow. We've only been actually closed for half a day. We did have a minor geese issue that kind of screwed up the water test a little bit, but when we did the retest, we were back in there at the end of the day. So it's been another great year at the pond. Sunday night concerts on the Common have had record numbers, by the way, between 250 and 300 people on Sunday nights. The children's shows on Tuesday and Thursday will be wrapping up this Thursday. They've been very well attended, anywhere from 175 to 400 for the famous Wayne from Maine, who draws a big crowd every year. On top of that, we've had 3 successful weeks of Girls Week. Demi's finishing up week 3 now. We had a boys week, a number of different adventure trips and adventure camps. So enormous amount of things have happened this summer. The amazing thing is that we have an unbelievable 104 high school and college kids, all North Andover residents, that work for us this summer. And if you've been following a lot of our social media platforms, those are the things that parents are talking about, the amazing young people that are working for us. And they are. We obviously get the credit as running the department, but I would be nowhere without those kids. And they range from the age of 16 to 23 that have been working with us. We just wrapped up with our closing ceremony with the staff on Friday, which was a pretty emotional time, but a great night on top of that. So obviously our staff here tonight, I think most people know Demi, our assistant director, Demi Tetro. And we have Justin Barry. Justin has been with us for a year now. We have 2 new staff people that just started this past week. Laura Stevens, who will be our support services coordinator, and Kyle Palladino, who grew up in North Andover, is our social programs coordinator. So they're just starting with us, and hopefully they're going to see how things go in the next year with that. The last person I want to introduce is, if you can stand up, John. John Boudreau was voted our staff member of the year for the summer. John is he'll be a junior at Syracuse University this fall. He has grown up in North Andover. He grew up at the youth center. This year, when we did have the change in full-time staff and the new staff not coming on until the end of the summer, John assumed 2 full-time jobs basically for us. He was the co-coordinator of our oldest group up at Reynolds Playground, the sports and rec program, and then he took on the leadership of running the Joe Walsh Summer League, which is not an easy task. So he was voted by our staff, and he's probably the most respected staff member we have. This will probably be John's last year. He's going into and looking for next summer to maybe have an internship in his field. He's a communications major at Syracuse. He will be a huge loss for us, so I wanted him to be here tonight with the staff because he's a big reason why we had a success this summer. So obviously we're a 12-month-a-year program, as you all know. Summer is an amazing time for us. We call it controlled chaos. It starts the day out of school, and it goes to basically, to this Sunday with the closing of the pond, and then we Then we kind of close down for 2 weeks, get the youth center ready, and we are back open the day after Labor Day. So we thank you for honoring us. We love what we do. We're passionate about what we do, and to be recognized by obviously my superiors with the town manager, assistant town manager, as well as the Board of Selectmen, it's an honor. So thank you for having us tonight.
So this year, Rick, you actually even did more than you. You're underselling yourself, right? Because this year was the first year you had a partnership with the North Andover School Department.
Yes, so Donna Strait is here right now. So we took on an amazing partnership. Donna approached me probably in the springtime, and we have been on a 5-year goal to be an all-inclusive facility, and we've done a great job with that. Our Summer Fun program, which is our most popular summer program, we talked about including a number of the special ed kids. So in meeting with Donna and Dr. Price, we put together a plan to have a number of their kids, came with support from the special ed department. So it was a great collaboration between our high school and college kids with her trained professional staff. And we had 11 of your kids at Atkinson School, which is the younger site, and we had 3 at the older site. We're going to be debriefing this week. We're talking about expanding it next year. It's been a major success. We've heard from some of the kids' parents thinking that it really worked out well. Our kids who basically saw the staff coming, they jumped at it, became buddies for the kids. And it's been a great plus. The school department also has a number of lists of kids that they'd like to maybe hire part-time to work with some of these kids. Kyle Salois in particular, who was outstanding with some of the kids down at Atkinson. So it was a new partnership, trying to up it up every year, and this was probably our big thing this year.
I would say so, and thank you for the opportunity just to speak about this. When Dr. Price and I heard that you were going to be honoring the rec program, we thought it was important to come and share with you how open Rick was in his staff members in opening the doors for these students who typically, they have some summer school programming, but it's usually in the classroom, in a school building. And you can imagine what that must be like on a hot summer day. And what we're trying to do is integrate them for some social skills and understanding their emotions and regulating it. And we're better than in a generalized environment where they're working with other kids and older kids who can do some of that modeling. So I was really thrilled when Rick was so open to it. And in fact, he's already had some brainstorms and some ideas bubbling up for how we can improve what we've done, which I think went super well from what I've seen. I was able to go to the dance party on Thursday, and so it was a great opportunity. So I just want to thank you and thank Rick and his staff for collaborating with the school district.
Thank you. It's been great. Obviously, our town manager and our superintendent of schools are really great at trying to look at collaboration. We're doing more every year with that, and I think you're seeing some of the results in that. Thanks.
Well, I'd like to invite the rest of the team from the Youth
Sure,
Center up because we do have some recognition from the board this evening.
What's that? No.
So, really your entire team.
Absolutely.
Because I know that the community really does appreciate the fact that you're building these role models for our younger kids in the community and all the different programs you have. And so with that, the certificate of appreciation is presented to the North Andover Youth and Recreation Department for your tireless efforts to bring the youth of our community together in a positive, productive, entertaining, and enriching environment for the summer of 2017 season. Your hard work and dedication are not only a testament to yourself, but also serve the foundation for building strong role models in the eyes of the youth you serve. Presented by the Board of Selectmen this evening, August 14th and 17th.
Thank you,
guys.
Appreciate it.
Smile, Rick.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. So, and we'll let them, you guys don't have to stay this whole evening. And with that, so there's one final planned announcement on the agenda, and that is regarding 70 May Street. Folks may recall that last year we began the process of funding this project, and so we have a house that is selling at $200,000 in affordable housing stock enhancement, you could say. And anybody who is interested in applying for consideration for this property must attend one of 2 scheduled seminars, one for Wednesday, August 23rd at 5:30 p.m., and the other for Wednesday, August 30th at 6 p.m. Both seminars are being held at Town Hall. It does not say the, Laura, do you know if that's the downstairs conference room? So in this room, okay, so the second floor Board of Selectmen's meeting room. So that is the only other planned announcement. Any other things from?
So do they have to attend the seminar prior to making the application?
Yes.
So they don't get chosen and then a requirement they must attend?
No, and they can only get the application by coming to the center.
Any other fun things happening in town?
I'd like to add that we haven't formally done it, but we've notified the board that we're likely, we're a little nervous to get this out too far in advance, but we're working with our new trash hauler, which begins the 1st of September, and our existing recycling company to rework one of the days, that would be Wednesdays, to make sure that the Wednesday recycling is picked up. That's been our most difficult recycling day. So we're using the change, bringing on a new trash contractor. Remember the recycling, everybody at home, the recycling contractor is remaining the same, but a new trash contractor. Having them work together with Public Works and looking at our layout of trash routes. And it's very likely that one of the days of trash, that being part of the Wednesday route, will change. We're not going to do that till we communicate it prolifically in every way possible, because changing trash is important. But the end goal is to make sure that Wednesday's recycling is picked up on Wednesday. That's the goal.
Wonderful.
And so we're working aggressively toward that. There'll be more to follow. People shouldn't start doing this now. There'll be postcards for the people impacted. There'll be robocalls for the people impacted. And so Jim Stanford and I are working together with the new contractor to make sure, and the current contractor, to make sure we communicate that effectively. But our goal is picking up the recycling on the day scheduled.
Makes sense.
Any other communications or announcements? With that, we can move into the next item on our agenda. It's the continuance of a public hearing, or I should say it's the resuming of a public hearing, where we previously had National Grid come before us at our last meeting, and we had some questions that remained. Point of information, no vote needs to be taken in order to reopen it because it was
No.
continued. So we can just immediately jump right into the public hearing by inviting, I think, most appropriately, a representative of National Grid to come up and represent to the board. So please state your name and.
Sure. My name's Chris Wellington.
Like-
I'm the program for underground cable replacement for URDs, which are underground residential developments. And for this project, it came to my attention probably in mid-June that they were having cable faults that were reoccurring within 30 days of each other. So there's different sections of cable that run from the riser pole out through the neighborhood. And typically when I see a URD having these kind of issues, they start to escalate and happen quicker and quicker and quicker to the point where you may have one cable fault a week. So I was alarmed to see that it was happening twice in 1 month. So I got a hold of Joe Morocco. He reached out to the DPW Director of Engineering, said, we need to have a meeting. So we met on site. Was trying to explain exactly what we had out there. This is a radially fed URD, so there's no loop, there's no backup. So if we lose a section of cable and we can't get it re-energized, anybody that's beyond that section of cable is out until we replace that section of cable. So in the past, we have had this happen. This happens sometimes because of end of life on cable. We've had it happen where a lightning strike will take out a cable, and we just roll the backhoes in and just start digging to get these people their power back. I did not want to do that in this case, so we were trying to be as proactive as possible, so we met on site. I explained this situation where if the cable goes bad, we're going to need to dig to replace it. And the DPW director explained that the road had just been paved. He had concerns about that. I said, well, I agree, and I can see that. I said, I really only have one option to do, is to drill under the road. I said, we will take on the added expense of trying to coordinate a drill to come in. I said, I have no idea the availability on these drills. It's over $1 million piece of equipment. They keep them busy throughout the summer construction period. I said, we'll reach out and see who we can get that is a contractor that's approved for doing work for National Grid, because they're working their energized lines when they do this. So we did find a contractor that was available in August. In the meantime, I said, well, you know something, I got time to petition, to let the people know in the area, let the town know what's going on. So I felt it best to petition for the work we were about to do instead of waiting for a cable fault to happen and just shock everybody by rolling out there. So I was trying to be a little proactive on that. I couldn't make the meeting myself. I apologize for that. I had another representative come. She wasn't as familiar with the program as I am, of course, and she presented the plans, but I'm not sure that the information was passed as well as it could have been, or could have answered the question as well as I can, because I'm familiar with the work. So in that case, we have a plan that we submitted. It's not as accurate or as defined as some of the plans we typically submit. My plans usually take about a year to create because we call DigSafe, and they come out and they mark all of the utilities, and then we bring in a survey crew and they survey all the marks, and they're put into a CAD print, and this CAD print shows all of the details that are on the street, shows driveways, shows mailboxes, shows trees, shows all of that. We didn't have the luxury to be able to do that, so we took the print and made one as quick as we could so we could use it, submit it, and try to get some approval for the work we were to perform. So in this detailed print that I have, a new version which I can give you, it shows lot lines, it shows the houses and the residents that will be affected. It shows the path of the primary conduit, and it does show in red some secondary conduit, and the reason for that is it's a common trench, so while the trench is open, if I'm passing by a secondary handhold that feeds a couple of houses and I'm going towards a transformer that it's fed from, it just makes good engineering sense to put a conduit in there that if for whatever reason the secondary fails, we can pull in new cable without having to dig up another trench and ruin some lawn or driveway without reason. So we've indicated a couple locations on that. And I think that's really all I have. And if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Yeah, I'd like to see the drawings that you have.
Yep, you can.
And then also, I think, a lot of the questions are on, the last time that this was presented was that there was questions on the number of trenches and how much digging would actually be done, because there were a number of neighbors that were concerned that their driveways would be affected. Some of them would just repave their driveways after the street paving, et cetera. So there was some concern there. So I think a lot of it was to clarify, what the effects there would be on the neighbors.
Sure. So a trench is typically about a foot wide. So in this plan, we're off edge of pavement, so we're not in the roadway. We're trying to stay off of pavement and keep away from the existing primary. The existing primary is about 5 feet off of pavement, all within the public right-of-way still. So we're trying to stay away from the existing live primary and kind of sandwich between the edge of pavement and run down the edge of the roadway. It will require us to cross driveways. There's nothing we can do about that. We have to cross driveways. And we need to cross a couple of roads. And we don't have a choice. We have to get across the road. So that's what we'll be doing. The one roadway that had been paved, we're bringing in a directional drill on September 11th to drill under the roadway, depending on what the results of this meeting.
So that directional drill can't be used to go through driveways as well, go into driveways?
We aren't really drilling to save a driveway. We're drilling because we're trying to not dig up a roadway that has a moratorium on it. I can't go and start drilling under driveways. It's $10,000 for me to get these people on site to drill under this driveway, to drill under this roadway. I just can't do it. I just can't be drilling under all these driveways. If every project I do, and I probably have 100 projects on my desk throughout the Merrimack Valley and the North Shore, there isn't one single project that somebody hasn't just paved the driveway. I would be drilling driveways from here to Gloucester. I just can't take on that added expense of rolling in a drill to drill under a driveway every time someone has paved the driveway. Trust me, I appreciate the fact that these driveways are maintained by the homeowners. I don't want to dig up people's driveways, but the only consolation I can give is that the guys that do the work for us We're not going to cut just a 1-foot strip across your driveway. We're going to come across the end of the driveway, we'll go beyond the edge of the trench, and we'll pave out to the edge of the roadway. So what it creates is like an apron effect. And it's a much better looking end of your driveway than this black strip across your driveway. That's what I can do.
So if I can just add to it, because part of the confusion last time, quite frankly, was there was the impression left that these were easements on private property that the grid was doing work on. And what's been clarified through this, we appreciate both the experience and the additional detail, is this is in the right-of-way. It just says what happens in the fair amount of subdivisions, if there's not a defined sidewalk, in essence, people have grassed over what is really the right-of-way. So it's public property, it's town, street, it's just been grassed over. So in those particular cases, a little different than what we thought when this first came up, was that you were on private property and therefore cutting across the end of someone's driveway. They're really in the public way. It just happens to be that the grass and the driveway have been extended because there's no formal sidewalk. And this is absolutely the traditional way to manage through cases where we're really in the public way, not on private property. So this is what we would expect. It's what has historically happened because of cost. I think the confusion last time was some belief that we're on private property, and in doing so, the conversation would have been different, but that's been clarified.
And we just did a project up on Hay Meadow and Sawmill, and it went well. We worked with the homeowners. The guys are out there working. If there's an issue, if there's a sprinkler head, if something that gets damaged, or if there's a dog fence that you're aware of or concerned about, they talk to the guys that are out there every day. You can see them digging down the street. Go out, meet with them, and they'll work with you. If you're not happy with the way the restorations are, you can meet with them. You can call me. I'll give out my card, and I'll meet with you. And I have met with homeowners. There were several homeowners that were at the meeting, and I couldn't attend, but I did meet with them on site and tried to explain what was going on out there. The lawn, we'll loom and seed it, and it's going to need to be watered. I have lawns that people don't water, and they're not happy with the results. And National Grid does not have a water truck that we can drive around and water people. We don't. We can't do that. So if you water your lawn or water the grass, I've seen neighbors' lawns look fabulous. You can't even tell we were there. And the next door, it looks rough. But it's really about, the care after we leave. But we will give you a good loom and good seed.
When you do the apron at the end of the driveway, do you grade it down so that water, if it's up,
Well,
then water will stay in the driveway? Do you
So
grade it down towards the street so it can go
depends on the
into
shape of
the...
the driveway, okay? Because there are a couple driveways out there that have a berm to maintain the water to keep in the street and not come down into their property.
Right.
So if there's a berm, we will maintain that berm, we'll rebuild that berm, because we recognize what's there. The guys that do the work, these guys have done the work for years, and they do a great work for National Grid. And if they didn't do good work, they wouldn't be working for National Grid. So, they will do a good job, and if you're not happy, I'll make them come back, and they will fix it. If you don't have a berm, it's, the driveway's going to be flat, and you're going to have a seam, and it's going to continue flat right out to the edge of the road.
So are you saying that there's a good chance that it won't just roll back into the edge of the driveway, or?
Should do
Yeah,
nothing
it'll
different than what
marry
it
right
did
up to
before.
the paving in your driveway, and it'll marry right up to the edge of the roadway. You won't even feel it when you drive home.
Okay.
Is that what you're asking?
Okay.
How long does this work, is this work anticipated to take? How long will people be living with this?
About a month, depending on if they hit ledge, which slows down digging, and there's some big rock up there. And if you drive up the road, you can see some big rocks beside people's houses and down the end of the street in a pile. And those rocks came from somewhere, and clearly probably the roadway when they built the roadway. That's the only concern I have. People want me to do directional drill on all their projects, but in New England, it's tough to do directional drill. It's really great on the Cape where there's a lot of gravel and sand. It's easy to do directional drilling, but in this, it's very tough in this area. So we don't typically do it. We do across the roadway. That's what I'm bringing them in for. But I don't think I could directional drill this project if I wanted to, because of the amount of rock.
Well, there's a reason that the Granite State is right next door.
Yeah, exactly.
How does the process, or how does the project proceed? Do you do a section of it, finish that off, and then do a next section, or do you dig the whole trench, lay the pipe, and then come back and fix everything up, or do you
So,
move along?
good question. Good question. So we usually start like at the riser, which is the pole on the end of the street, and they'll dig 200 feet a day, roughly, and they'll put the pipe in the ground, and then they'll cover it. So at the end of the day, there isn't an open trench, all right? If we come to a person's driveway, we usually let them know ahead of time we're coming, and if they need to get in and out for emergency, we always have steel plates, or we just do half the driveway, fill it, and then do the other half, so that they can get out of their houses.
You said you usually let them know?
Well, they see us coming, and we'll knock and leave a hanger on the door, or I'll do a mailing so they know we're coming.
Okay.
So I give them, we call door hangers, and they'll say we're either going to be across the street or crossing the drive or whatever, and they'll hang it. So I can guarantee that'll happen, if you question that. So I can guarantee that they will be advised the day before they get to their house, at minimum.
But then you come back and do the finish work, so that's, you do
So-
200 feet a day, go
So we
ahead.
do 200 feet a day, but we're not always working in roadway. We're working in dirt. Typically, most of this is going to be on the side of the road. It's going to be all lawn and loam. We crush the driveway, we're going to fill it and fix it. And so there is no open trenches. We can't leave open trenches in Massachusetts, so we leave no open trenches. We put the pipe in, and then after the pipe is all installed, we'll come in and we'll pull the cable in and then cut the development over to the new cable. If a cable goes while we have a new section of pipe in, we can always pull a new cable in the pipe we just put in. So,
But the reseeding and the finished asphalt gets done at the end of,
yep, the reseeding will be at the end of it.
Correct.
So they'll put the loom down, but then they'll come in after the very end and put the seed at the end of the season.
Yeah, thanks.
And you want to start this when?
I could start it in 2 weeks.
ASAP?
Well, you
I
said
could start it
contract was available in
tomorrow.
August, right?
Yeah, so, but I mean,
Sorry.
if something happens, I could start it tomorrow. But I'm looking at probably 2 weeks. But the directional drill is going to be 9/11 on that Monday.
All right, okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Wellington? Is there anybody in the audience looking to speak on this? Okay. If there are,
close the public hearing.
hearing.
yep, motion made. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, the public hearing is closed.
Move approval of the project.
Selectman Smedili made a motion,
Seconded?
seconded by Selectman Nobley. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Good luck to the neighborhood. Thank you. Okay. The next item, the removal of a public shade tree at 70 May Street.
Mr. Chair, I move we open the public hearing and receive comments on proposed removal of a public shade tree in front of 70 May Street.
Motion made. Do I hear a second?
Second?
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, the public hearing is open. Excuse me?
I don't see.
Okay. Is there anyone to speak?
I can tell you about it, it's just to remove the tree in front of the house.
I can't imagine for
It's
what
getting in the way of
project.
construction.
Okay.
Very detailed explanation.
At 70 Main Street.
Is there anybody else to speak on this? Any neighbors curious? No? Okay.
When you say get in the way. Well, we had to go to the zoning board in order to move the footprint of the house, so that we could sort of move it to the middle of the lot, and this is going to interfere with the construction.
So as a result, the tree was way right smack in front.
I believe it's right in the front of Main Street, yeah. And then the DPW had given their recommendation that it was going to eventually have to come down anyway, so
Okay,
they would have had to pay for it, so now.
fair enough. Okay.
So will it be replaced, Laurie, with another tree? Is the landscape design
No.
call for something to replace
Not
it?
there, but they are doing a couple of plantings that actually the zoning board had asked for information on where the landscape, what the landscaping plan is going to be, so that is on file. There will be other trees planted.
In front? This one's in front.
I can't recall whether they're in front or not.
I would think they'd be in front, because in back it's private property.
Well, they have the whole side too. It's a corner,
Okay.
so it's May Street and,
I know where you
well,
are.
actually May goes around, I think,
Okay, that's across from Cape Court, right?
yeah.
So is the ZBA requiring a landscape plan as part of the file? Or just a plant, like a,
They asked us for it, it's all been approved
so
and
will there
everything, yeah.
be in the ZBA record a landscape plan associated with the redevelopment?
Any additional questions for Ms. Gerslow? Do I hear a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Selectman Nobley, seconded by Selectman Valencourt. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Hearing closed. Do I now hear a motion to, or do I hear, I should say, discussion on the intended removal of the tree at 70 May Street?
I guess my only comment is I'd like to see it replaced with something, and we all, we pride ourselves on the our tree-lined streets, so it would be good, and I'm sure, knowing the organization that's doing this, I'm sure they'll do something to make sure that occurs, but this looks like a mature tree, so something in it to replace it would be what I'd like to see happen. I don't know if we can condition it that way.
Well, let's
or-
try.
Let's try.
Let's do it, see what happens.
Do I
Work on that.
hear such a motion?
So I'll make a motion to approve the removal of the public shade tree with the intention of replacing it with something, I'm not gonna say equivalent, because that's a very mature tree, so something, appropriate for that area. That's not, again, gonna, kill the sidewalk and overtake the house, but something appropriate.
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Can't put a tree somewhere on
All opposed, hearing none, the motion passes.
No, yeah,
the lot. Just somewhere on the lot.
somewhere on the lot, in the front.
So, we are now moving on to consent items. We have a request of Bob Oteri. I probably just butchered that name.
Yeah.
Did I do a good job? Okay, good. Great, look at that. You hear that pronunciation?
Mr. Arteri I had him for a high school teacher, 1970 something or other. No. It was
Must have been a student teacher.
Utopian Worlds. It was a great class. 81. Yeah. I never listened to the song Imagine the Same again after that class. It was a good class.
At least it wasn't so bad.
So, Mr. Oteri, if you wouldn't mind stating your name into the microphone and just speaking to the Willow Street and Flagship Drive for the closing of, the closing of for the Walk for Hope, the request made by the Samaritans for October 21st, 2017, from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m.
Okay, first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Bob Arteri, and I am a representative of the Samaritans of the Merrimack Valley. I also have here with me our executive director of the Samaritans of the Merrimack Valley, Deborah Helms. I can tell you a little briefly about what we're hoping to do on October 21st. I did speak to the town manager's office, and Lori was very helpful to me, and I had sent out a little overview. I'm not sure if you have it or you've read it, but I'll just give you a little overview as to what it's about. First of all, for those of you who don't know or are not familiar with the Samaritans, of course, is an international group, but has been in the Merrimack Valley area since 1980, believe it or not. And it's an organization which, of course, a lot of serious work, and it provides emotional support to those in crisis, suicide prevention. But perhaps one of the more important things it does is also provide awareness of the particular issue, which unfortunately is becoming more and more prevalent in our society, but also education not only to the general public, but to teachers. As Mr. Valcourt indicated, I was a teacher in North Andover High School for a couple of years, and the importance of understanding the issue. And I'm a volunteer. The work that the Samaritans does, and it's just a small group of a couple of people, is just remarkable. I was on the board many years ago, and there was a period of time where we would get literally 40,000 calls a year from people in emotional distress. Now we're getting a lot of, which is great, a lot of people, usually younger people, sending information through text and communicating with them through text. We're a volunteer group, basically, and what we're trying to do, like many non-profit organizations, there's serious issues with funding, so there was some discussion about doing some fundraising, and the idea of a walk came up. Not a road race, but a walk, to do two things: to raise needed funds for the programs that we run, and those programs include the phones and counseling, Safe Place, which is a group that meets twice a month for those who have lost loved ones to suicide, and it's all nonprofit. All the money we get is nonprofit, and all the money that we raise. So the particular event in the particular location, I explained to you, we were trying to find a place that would be most suitable for this, and this would be our first walk, and one that would have the least impact on the traffic and so forth. And lo and behold, my law office is in Willows Professional Park. As we were looking at different places, and I live in Methuen, but I've been Willows Professional Park for well over, after I left North Andover High School, I became an attorney. I've been in there for over 20 years. And every afternoon, people walk, if you know the area, around the industrial park, which is just a wonderful area, very little traffic. And so it just hit me that this might be a good place. So I did call the town manager's office. I did speak to the police, first of all, to see whether they had any major issues, and they did not. And the particular time we're looking at, the date is October 21st. Wish we had been here sooner, but like any volunteer group, it took us a while to get together, plan this, and get going. And we're not going to be there that long. I mean, registration from maybe 8:30 to 9:30, and then the walk, which itself is about a little bit close to 1.5 miles around, starting from Willow Street, right next to the Willows Professional Park, near my office, actually, and going past the Racquetball Club and around and coming around Bacon Joy, Flagship Drive, and then ending there. We're calling it the Walk for Hope. It's not a race, as I said before. Certainly there will be no alcohol or anything like that served. And the sponsors for the event, the nonprofit sponsors, we are requesting and are in the process of getting corporate sponsors, is the Samaritans, the Merrimack Valley, as well as Family Services, which does really yeoman's work. The issue of parking is always an issue when you have people coming in. We don't really know how many people will come. Could be 100, could be 200. It's our first time doing this event. But one of the things that also hit me is on Saturdays, sometimes when I'm in my office, the Willows Professional Park, the older one, not the brick one, which is where my office is there's very little people working that particular day. So I've already spoken, and I was a member of the Condominium Association, spoken to the president of the organization. They said they'd be more than willing to allow us to have people park there and have our registration there, and then of course we'll clean it up and get out. So there's off-street parking, which is one of the concerns that I think it was a sergeant that I spoke to in the police department had indicated. So hopefully we have that. As far as events itself, we're essentially going to have the registration. We are seeing if we can have someone who can just sing, to provide a little bit of music, but it's not going to be any rock music or anything else, given the organization and so forth. We've requested, and she's going to participate, Senator L'Italian is going to speak at the event before everybody gets going. As I said, I did speak to the police, and they indicated that I have to go through process, which is speak to you folks first. If you give it the consent and the go-ahead, then I need to follow up with them just to make sure that we have appropriate police detail, which really shouldn't be too much of an issue. And that's pretty much it. And I'd be willing to take any questions, and Debbie certainly is here if you have any specific other questions regarding the organization and the event itself.
Just for clarification, we through Laurie, takes your application and forwards it to all the town departments that would be impacted, and they in turn have provided the feedback and included in the material and provided that to the board. The police are not requiring a detail from what I've...
They will not require a detail?
Well, I can give you the feedback that I have directly from the police department that goes. So we send it out, you come into us, it all gets sent out to departments. That way
Right.
You're not dealing with individual departments. But I believe I read there was not one required.
The sector car will be assigned if available to assist vehicular and foot traffic.
I should say we have about, which is just fantastic, the group, and a lot of people who have themselves personally been affected by suicide are going to volunteer. We have about 20, 25 people who are going to assist in, putting this event together. We'll have people helping with the parking and things of that nature. But as I said, because we can use the condominium association parking, if you're familiar with the parking lot, it's huge. And if there's no, 1 or 2 cars working early in the morning, there should be very minimal impact. And I will, because I do know him, I will go over and speak to the fellow who runs the racquetball club, because usually people go over playing racquetball in the morning, but they have their own parking. And we won't be impacting that. We'll go right by that and come around.
So if the board were to approve this, you just go back to Laura, and she'll provide you any of the material that any of the departments may require you to have.
Okay, so yeah, and obviously we would want some guidance if we are required to contact the police, just to make sure that we're on board with them and doing the things we're supposed to do. As I said, this is our first time doing this, so we need all the guidance we can get.
Sounds like a very worthwhile event, and like you said, low impacting. I mean, I remember I taught all my kids how to drive in that area when they were young, so there's no traffic there on the weekends. It's a great spot to have something like this. Yeah, I don't see any issues.
Okay.
I think it's terrific, and thank you on behalf of, frankly, all of us. It's a tough job.
This is the lady you really need to thank.
It's a tough job,
What she
but
does
I'll
on a
tell you-
daily basis is just remarkable.
Without all my volunteers, I will tell you that.
Yeah, but you do God's work, and I'll tell you, it's tough. And it's got to be scary sometimes when those calls come in. So, thank you all for doing that.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that the Board of Selectmen approve the request of Bob Arteri to use Willow Street and Flagship Drive on Saturday, October 21st, 2017, from 10 to 11:30 a.m. as presented.
Motion made by Selectman Valencourt. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Seconded by Selectman Smedili. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye.
Good luck.
Thank you so much. So I'll be hearing from Lori as far as anything else? Okay. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. So the next item on the agenda this evening is, seems to be an annual thing, right? A very positive annual thing where we have the vote for, to change the abatement rate and number of participants for the senior property tax work-off program. And the town manager has included additional information. So we did this last year. I think last year. We
Every
didn't
year
do,
that
do
you
we do
every
the
year
increase
you
every year?
approve the program. We have always a strong interest from the members of the senior center to take advantage of it. We made an effort of, Irene and her staff made an effort to communicate in a broader pool to those folks through the tax bill process, which is a good way to do it. And this year, the recommendation is that we increase. What we're always balancing is the need and desire to want to give seniors an abatement with the fact that we need to have work for them to do. It's always a balance. So part of the reason you've seen the program grow over the last several years is an increased interest from those seniors and an effort by the senior center to reach out to make people aware of the program. And the rate per hour has been changing because we're trying to keep pace with the minimum wage. We actually don't have to comply with the federal minimum wage, but we try to keep pace with the state minimum wage. So the recommendation this year is that 50 people or 50 participants be approved by the Board of Selectmen at $11 an hour, which would allow for 50 seniors to receive an $1,100, up to an $1,100 tax abatement.
So we've increased our number.
From 40 to 50, and a recommendation from $10 to $11 on the rate per hour.
Do we normally max that? Obviously, if we're going to 50, we must get all those positions get filled?
Positions get filled. In fact, the senior center goes through a process where, as part of normal application, which is in May, they actually interview folks to make sure there's a match between what folks' interests may be and their skills with the departments that are requesting. We often have, or have for the last couple of years, have more interest than positions, so we continue to try to find places where seniors can serve. So this year, I believe we had 60 to 62 people apply. We keep on, the senior center keeps on working again to find places where these folks can serve, so we can come back to you and make a recommendation that more folks be covered by the program.
Great.
So the
great,
senior
great.
center puts out a request to the different
Application.
town departments to say,
Yes.
what jobs do you have that could be filled from this pool?
Right.
That's
Probably
great.
starts with the initial, here's what we typically do.
Yeah.
And then is there anything else you can see someone doing that is not part of what we've historically done? Sometimes departments will say, okay, we participated in the program. On rare occasions, we'll say, geez, it doesn't meet us, so we maybe need less hours. But more often than not, it's the same. It's the similar departments, and then we look for more a broader group of departments to participate in some other way to find new ways to use the seniors so we can come back and recommend more seniors to participate.
It's really great.
And it's really appreciated by the seniors.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that the Board of Selectmen increase the abatement rate for senior citizen property tax workup program to $11 per hour and increase the maximum number of participants to 50.
Motion made, seconded. Only point of discussion is, do we need to include in there specifically about the property tax as well, the maximum $1,100? I know that the math works out that way. It's
Just the
assumed,
math
but
works out that way. You don't have
we
to
don't have
include that.
Okay. Motion made, seconded. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Hearing none? Great, thank you for that. Next item on the agenda is surplus vehicles from the police department. So-
Chairman, I think the attached material explains, self-explanatory, it should be. As has been the practice, any vehicles we purchase come with an offset of surplusing and traditionally trading those in to offset the cost. So we end up with no net new vehicles. We just trade them in against the purchase.
Do I hear a
Move
motion?
that the Board of Selectmen approve the request of Police Chief Charles Gray to surplus a 2008 Ford Expedition, a 2007 Dodge Charger, as per his memorandums to the town manager dated July 26, 2017.
Motion made by Selectman Nobley. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Selectman Valencourt. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. The next item on the agenda is a vote to establish an other post-employment benefits committee, commonly referred to as OPEB. And so we've discussed this. I think at this point this would be our second formal discussion. But it's been periodically brought up before this board over the past several months. I know that I, as chairman, have had the chair of the finance committee engage me on this conversation, and so our last meeting, we had discussed the idea of forming this committee to review our OPEB obligations, and so we do have in the agenda a draft of what this committee could be, but tonight's an opportunity to discuss it for a second time and decide if we're going to move forward.
I would just say, just from my experience coming from the Finance Committee, which certainly spent a little bit of time on OPEB, we felt that that was just sort of a passing glance, and there wasn't really much to do other than start to digest the information, and we just didn't have enough time to peel it back. But given the significance of this, just in the long range, maybe not necessarily immediately impactful on town choices, but there really isn't a place for us to look at this in depth. And so to me, this really makes a lot of sense, just coming from that perspective, that there really hasn't been enough time, yet we've got a lot of expertise to bring to this evaluation. And I certainly appreciate what Town Manager Mailer has done to put us in, relatively speaking, a much better position than we were prior to his tenure. But it's a long road ahead. So I appreciate your resources and encouragement to really establish this.
What we've put in front of you is consistent with the board spoke about last meeting, committee of 7, 1 resident. I won't identify each of the members, but pretty much what you spoke about last meeting. That's really what I'm putting together as a framework for the committee.
I know that in our discussion, we talked about having a staff person from the school department. Point of information, are we allowed, or do we have to word it?
That'll be Jim Maley.
But would we, because it's not an employee of the municipal side, we obviously can't compel an employee, but do we have to change the language to reflect that they would be invited if such a motion were?
I spoke to the superintendent, and she is comfortable to assign Mr. Maley.
Okay.
I spoke to Mr. Maley, he's comfortable being assigned.
Okay.
Everybody's comfortable. Mr. Maley is the appropriate person in seriousness.
That's great. That's great.
So
I
any other
move
discussion?
that the Board of Selectmen establish an OPEB advisory committee, which shall include representation from the Board of Selectmen, a representative from the Finance Committee, a representative from the School Committee, the finance director, the human resources director, assistant superintendent of finance for the school department, and 1 resident.
Motion made by Selectman Nobley. Do I hear a second?
Second that.
Seconded by Selectman Valencourt. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Motion passes.
Mr. Chair, are we actually going to make our appointment tonight, or are we going to do that at a future meeting?
I did see that there was not, it's not technically, well, we have I guess there's a little bit of leeway that we're given based on the language of the agenda where we say that we are forming the OPEB committee, and I think that under that umbrella we could appoint one of our colleagues. Is there, I know that at least one of our colleagues has expressed an interest to me. I don't know if anybody else has an interest or...
Okay, I'm good with the...
Any?
I think we have one person who's been on the finance
Yep,
committee who's
I-
probably at least well-versed in the topic from that role, so that probably would be a good choice.
I'd be comfortable with that.
Well, we have several finance committee alumni on this board, actually,
right.
so...
Oh, then excuse me for my ignorance on the positions that everyone's filled.
Okay, I'm not offended. Move approval.
Motion made by Selectman Smedili. Do I hear a second?
Well,
We have to actually say the name.
Yeah, well, the understood name of Selectman Nobley.
Motion made by Selectman Smedili to appoint Selectman Nobley to the OPEB committee. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Selectman Valencourt. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. That passes. And so, Mr. Town Manager, or Lori, would the appropriate next step be to communicate to the chairs?
Yes, we will communicate with the various boards. And we'll put out something for a resident who may have an interest. We'll communicate with Finance Committee, School Committee, notify Mr. Mealy. I've already spoken to the staff members so that they're aware of it, and we'll send out something to the board so they can vote a person to participate, and then from that, probably a memo which describes the goal of the board to all members, calling for an organizational meeting of sorts or an initial meeting, and the board go from there.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you both. So the next item on the agenda, we have the Affordable Housing Trust. So, excuse me, I'm jumping ahead. We have the Patriotic Observance Committee that is next on the agenda. Mr. Town Manager, the Appointments Subcommittee.
Not a word.
I don't know if you'd like to speak to the Patriotic Observance Committee and some of the changes that are housekeeping that we're proposing.
Nope. So the original part of this conversation came up as some years ago when I first saw this documentation. It was something that had been provided to me probably within the first couple of months I was here as a governance document for a particular committee in town, the Patriotic Observance Committee, which has done great work over the years. When I read the document initially, it was inconsistent with traditional ways to do things for boards and committees, and we can certainly talk about that if you'd like. It didn't mean the committee was not doing good work, and quite frankly, it didn't even mean that the committee was following its own governance, because I think it had morphed over time. But looking at the document itself, my interest at the time was to remove the document, because some of the information in it is just not consistent with the way governments typically operate, but continue to support the committee moving forward to make sure that the projects that they're involved in stay vibrant and important. So that came up a couple of times, quite frankly, after that initial time, and then came up again when the new subcommittee was appointed. They asked a question, what's this group? And as I attempted to try to explain, it got a little choppy trying to explain that. So I thought the best way was to provide this governance document that existed and had been passed in 2008 to the committee, which probably raised more questions rather than less. So in summary, what I did was I put together a memo to the board, to you folks, and said, this is what I would do as it relates to moving forward steps as it relates to the Patriotic Observance Committee. Let me state what's obvious in the first sentence of the memo. Committee does great work and should stay. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about. It's the fact that for some reason, and I was not here, so I can't speak to it, there was a formality, a sort of governance document for what I would refer to as an ad hoc committee. The committee doesn't exist through bylaw. The committee doesn't exist through statute. The committee doesn't exist through charter. It was a committee that's formed over time, and so therefore I would refer to as an ad hoc committee. And it was the governance which is inconsistent with how we generally treat committees like this. but it's not the mission or purpose. So with that, I explained what I thought were the complications with having a governance document, and in summary, what I'm suggesting is the committee continues to do its work, but that this document that the board adopted, predecessor board, back 9 years ago, basically be removed, repealed, and the committee travel forward in the same way all the rest of our committees do, without such a formal document. That was my recommendation in summary. But I certainly can answer any questions about what I provided you in terms of a memo.
So the changes that you have, if you could just go over that.
Sure.
a little bit.
Yep. So the primary initial change, the primary change is the committee is back in 2008 with the Board of Selectmen by adopting this. And again, I don't know where even the statutory authority lies, so let's call it a policy document, for lack of a better term. It indicated that the members replace themselves. And that is not a common practice. You're the appointing authority most of the time, say 80% of the time, 70% of the time. And for committees that are not defined by charter or bylaw, the default is, under state statute, the Board of Selectmen, in this form of government. So under the existing governance, the body reappoints itself as opposed to the Board of Selectmen appointing the members. You know, I think it stands on its surface that that's not the regular way of doing things, nor do I think it's a good practice, because the board should have the ability to fill slots as they open. That, to me, makes sense. That's the authority the board has and has exercised for a long time. So that's the primary piece. One is I think you should repeal the document, because the board adopted this governance, and it contains certain things in it that, quite frankly, conflict with statute. It indicates that the members pay a fee. Members can't pay a fee to join a committee. It indicates that a member of the committee can remove other people from the meeting based on certain circumstance. Well, we have a public meeting law that doesn't allow that. So if you get into the individual pieces of it, in total, the document just needs to be repealed. We even struggle with the term. I guess it's repeal, ripped up. It just shouldn't.
Repeal,
No, I don't want to do any replacement. I just want to repeal. No, nothing. So it just doesn't need to exist for a committee to function well. A committee needs a mission charged by this board and a membership to complete that mission. And so, in summary, what I'm recommending is you repeal. You remove the existing governance document because it's not necessary and, quite frankly, conflicts with several state statutes, and that the committee will be allowed to continue its work under the direction of the board based upon the mission of the committee, which is to support these veterans events, which they've historically done. And that's how it's moved forward. So you'd return to yourself the appointing authority of the group. I think this group, again, we get some various numbers. Sometimes we hear there's 9 or 10 or 11, but 9 has been the historic number. I think we stay with that. I am recommending that the Veteran Service Officer not be a member of this group. That's because I think it's just better practice that the group itself focus on what it's doing and work alongside the Veteran Service Officer. That's a more common model, but that's a recommendation, and you can choose to sort of pursue that as you see fit. I don't think it changes the direction. I just think that this group should be advising and working with the Veterans Officer rather than a sort of this voting member of the person. That's sort of my take on it. But first and foremost, the most important part is to repeal the document, but keep the committee in place. It's an important committee. Those are the higher level things that are important to me.
So we don't have a replacement for that. We don't have another charter or mission statement that's yet to be developed, right? So tonight would be...
Well, I wouldn't rewrite a policy. I think we could write it. I think the mission exists. That's the support. I think the mission is, so we don't have a governance document for any of our boards and committees that are not, say, elected boards. That's what makes this unusual, is we have one. I literally you wouldn't need, I'm recommending you don't replace this, you just repeal it, no replace. But that the committee, with the work it's been doing, continues to do that work, supporting Memorial Day events and Veterans Day events and other work that it's involved in. And the other recommendation I'm making is the Veteran Service Officer should, he's a department head here doing work, and that group should work alongside him for the benefit of veterans. So those are the two. So I wouldn't replace it with another document. I would, because I'm trying to think of other committees that would fall into this realm, but if you think of non-charter, non-bylaw committees, Festival Committee, that actually is a charter or bylaw committee, but it's similar. There's certainly some similar to it. Friends on the Council on Aging, Friends on the Library, those are boards appointed by you folks that know what they're doing. They're supporting, and they work with a department to accomplish noble goals, right? So I'm simply recommending you throw out the old governance and live without governance. because we don't traditionally have those. Everybody should generally understand what the goal of the group is. You certainly could establish a mission statement if you wanted, but that would be the extent of it.
Understood.
The only thing that I'm just a little bit uncomfortable with, because it's the summer months, I just hate to repeal without at least informing and discussing this with some of the members. I think that they could be a little bit shocked. So just to table it at least for another meeting and have them.
Well, I have spoken to the chairman. I met with him personally and spoken on the phone, just to make sure he was aware of the changes, was very clear about what my recommendation was, so that it wouldn't come before the board without having that conversation. I think that's certainly advice. I think in either case...
I do know he's on vacation.
Sure.
So
yeah.
he couldn't be here.
I would say in either case, regardless of whether you make any decisions, and that's up to you to replace, the repeal is necessary because there's existing conflicts.
Yeah, there's language in there that's messy. I agree with you.
I'd say,
You know, charging fees.
Charging fees,
I
removing
think-
people in rooms, having your own bank account. There's none of it that exists anywhere else in anything we do. So the repeal to me is a fairly light lift. If there's a decision of the board that there should be a replacement document, that's up to the board. But repealing this is a light lift because it doesn't make the committee go away. It simply says, and I think in large part the committee's not operating under these governance.
I don't think
The
they
chairman
are.
would tell you that. We're not charging fees to members who attend. We're not throwing people out of meetings, right? None of that is happening. So it seems to me the repeal, the faster we remove the conflict between something we're calling governance and conflicts with charter and state statute, I think the more comfortable we'd all feel. That's up to the board of how they want to do a replacement at all.
I hear what you're saying, but again, I just would hate for this not, during the summer months, people don't get these messages, and most of the people, but not all, are our veterans, people who've served. I just would hate for them to read in the paper that it was repealed. I just think, it would be nice if they came and had to say what they think, whatever. I'm a little bit uncomfortable with that. They work hard. They've done an unbelievable job. I mean, Mr. Mitchell was in charge of it. This is how it got started. People have no idea. It's a lot of work putting these events and making sure they're done well, according to protocol, military protocol, so forth and so on, a lot of research. I think the accounts portion of it was for money they give out plaques and stuff like that, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure if the town pays for that. I just think as a professional courtesy that we at least table it till everyone has been informed as to what's going on and they just don't get shocked.
Well, can I ask, were they notified that it was on the agenda for tonight? I mean, I know.
I don't know.
Well, I've spoken to Ms. Medial is a member of the committee, and Dan Lane is the chairman, so I've communicated with those two
He
folks.
has.
I didn't circulate to the broader group, because quite frankly, I didn't see it. I mean, my first sentence, so everybody's clear on this, my very first sentence in the memo is the Patriotic Observance Committee has been serving the community with great distinction for many years, and I go on to say I wouldn't change the committee. I think the process you choose to take, I think it's clear the committee should stay. I don't think there should be any disagreement about that, and hopefully people wouldn't get that impression from anything. I'm not sure how many committee members know, quite frankly, this document exists.
Right, that was going to be my question.
Yeah.
Well, and ultimately, we could repeal it without having to establish the mission at this meeting, and it doesn't compromise the existence of the committee and their planning for veterans. And actually, it would allow them to know coming into the next meeting, potentially, if this were the motion, we could put on the next agenda the actual establishment of the mission. Perhaps they'd want to broaden it.
Well, that's right. I would think that they would want maybe to be a party to it. And I think probably, and again, I'm not speaking for the committee.
You are a member. Are there things that you...
Well, just certain
specifically?
things that I do think a certain number should be, obviously, veterans. A member of the American Legion, a member of the VFW, things like that, I think would be appropriate. They should be town residents.
I'm not sure we've always done that.
Town resident piece?
No, I don't think we've always done that. I think that's part of the confusion right now is when we ask for a list of the members, it says 9 even in the governance, but there's not I think that number, I think it's more than 9 currently, and it's difficult to get a list. So, but I think those things, like every committee, how many members, you're right, what they should serve, I think those all make sense.
I think that it's just professional courtesy to the group who's done a great job, and they've, as I said, so many of them have served our country with honor and distinction. It's just my personal feeling. that it would be nice if we were made sure that they all were informed, and then say, and have it being explained to them versus perhaps reading it in the newspaper. I don't know that this document was on what, for people who do get the agenda. I don't know that, you can't go by me because sometimes my computer doesn't work great, that you were able to open it.
No, it was not attached, it was not attached for a specific reason. Part of the reason associated with that was so that we could have a narrative, rather than someone opening a document, quite frankly, and experiencing the same thing you're explaining.
Right.
I'd rather have a narrative explaining what the goal is. The goal is not an elimination of the Patriot God Observance Committee at all. The goal is to eliminate a document which is not consistent with state statute and keep the committee intact would be my recommendation, and move forward. And to me, this was more of an administrative action rather than anything else. So I wanted to be able to explain that rather than someone saying, what is this all about?
No, and I
That was my-
understand that, but again,
But it'd be
they
attached to
didn't even
that.
have an opportunity to do that. So I just, again, there's nothing forthcoming immediately. Our next probably event will be Veterans Day, so I think there's time just to say, this is what's going on. You might want to come to the next meeting and learn more or whatever. That's all. It's up to the board. That's my feeling, and I feel as though that's the right thing to do in a case like this for people who deserve.
Can you put that in the form of a motion so we can
Thank you.
open up the discussion?
I would just ask that this be tabled to all members of the committee have been informed and made aware that this is not an action against the committee, but just, frankly, some housekeeping, and put on the next agenda. Is that what you wanted to hear? Is that good enough?
The next agenda, August 28th, right? So it
So
would be
it's like-
an opportunity to notify the members of the Patriotic Observance Committee between now and August 28th, and give them an opportunity to come to a meeting.
If they choose, they might say, no, that's no, they're all
If
set.
they choose to.
Yeah.
If no one shows up, then that was their opportunity.
Right. That's
So-
all. Thank you.
So the language is?
What
as
Dickie and I
Selectmen.
both said.
Okay, motion made by Selectman Smedili, and that you feel comfortable with that, the language of that motion for the minutes. Do I hear a second?
Will you second it if
I'll
it's my
second it for
motion?
discussion.
Seconded by Selectman Valencourt. Any discussion?
I guess I'm trying to, we've got two separate issues here, and I really appreciate what Town Manager Mailer has done, which is to take the housekeeping piece and separate that out from the mission piece. And it seems that the housekeeping piece is an opportunity to create transparency and an opportunity really to get consistency. And so to maybe expand the mission of what this committee does. So it seems to me we have an opportunity to take care of a relatively simple housekeeping piece, which seems to me is a necessity because of these conflicts here, and then have an opportunity perhaps at a subsequent meeting to really have the committee or representatives of the committee come in and say, here's what we'd like, and maybe we do have a mission statement. But really, I think there are two different things here. It seems to me the most important piece of this, again, comes back to a mechanical housekeeping component, which if we look at the 20-some committees we have across the town, this gets it consistent with that. And I think it's a great opportunity really to open up the door to have folks understand what the committee does and maybe draw more people in to participate by giving it more definition in a subsequent meeting. So I'd like to see us take care of the housekeeping piece and make sure on our agenda the next time that there is some representatives come in and we do talk about setting that mission. That would be just my personal perspective.
So I think, and of course, I appreciate Andrew with all the work and support it, but I think, Selectman Smedili has a point that, there are members of this committee who, have a right to understand what's being presented or being done. And they probably don't even know that these rules exist, to tell you the truth, right? There's probably nothing here. And my expectation is no one's going to show up on August 28th. But the intent is to, I think to just put that out there. We've been, running under these rules since June 20th, 2011. So it's, it's been a couple of years, and I think another 2 weeks is not going to really change things all that much. So you know, if the motion was to repeal it, I would probably support it, but I also understand the importance of, you know, we have volunteers in town, and they are, do their right for a chance to at least hear it firsthand. If they don't show up, they don't show up, and we just move forward.
I don't think that that's, I mean,
I agree with that. I think that we absolutely need to
Right.
repeal it. So we need to repeal it. There's ethical things that don't make sense. But it's the summer and schedules are what they are, and I have no issue continuing for 2 weeks. I mean,
I think as long as
it's
there's
been in place
clarity.
for that long, so
Right,
I don't think nothing's gonna fall apart if we wait 2 weeks.
I mean, I agree with what you're saying there, Selectman Keen, in the sense that we just want to make sure there's an understanding that this next discussion is not about whether it's going to be
Right.
appealed. And I think that's the one part that I want, that was why I asked us to maybe step back a second, try to make sure that we keep these two separate, because the housekeeping is very, very different than making sure that this mission and what this committee does is not only kept and codified, but expanded and given really the opportunity to do what it needs to do. So I want to make sure those are really, really separate.
and that being the case, I really actually hope that Selectman Valencourt is wrong. I hope that they come to the next meeting because we'd be establishing the mission, so we'd want it to be consistent.
I mean, I guess that's the point of,
Yeah.
I like the idea of repealing it and saying at the same time, here's the mission. So I would like to have some feedback of someone on the committee as to, is this the right mission? This is the mission the mission that we crafted in thinking that we might pass this tonight is a mission that I think makes sense. But out of due respect, I would like to hear from the committee members that they agree that that's a good mission, or they would suggest expanding it or whatever.
Yeah.
Fair.
I think it dovetails nicely actually with what our mission has been as a board, especially this past year with trying to get more committees into our meetings and
Yeah.
soliciting feedback. This is kind of,
Exactly.
actually this is beyond consistent if that's possible, because we're rewriting a board's mission in essence, so
Yeah.
really good points. So motion made by Selectman Smedili, seconded. Any additional discussions on this? So the motion was to table until our next meeting. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none. Motion passes.
I recommend on the next agenda as well, you add an appointment, because if the board proceeds with the repealing of this, you then reassume the responsibility of appointment, and what I've included in the memo was a recommendation that all current members get appointed
And I
through
noted that. Thank
the
you
end of
for
the
that.
year.
Yeah.
So I think on your next agenda, you should put that appointment piece, so that if you vote to repeal in one step, you reappoint all the existing members through the balance of time. You pick the date, but that'd be one, the suggestion was that they automatically get reappointed.
And I think that's fair to say that town manager clearly had that in the memo. He did, that all the members were to be reappointed, and it was very clear, so I don't want anyone to think otherwise. And as I said, some of the things that are on there, where did this come from? I think what it came from is they took the information from the American Legion and maybe the VFW and just moved it over to this.
Exactly.
And you're right, and some of it is clearly not appropriate. So, but again, thank you. I thank you to the board for that. I appreciate it.
Just one final one, sorry, I don't mean to kick this further down the road. The one feedback I did get from the current chairman was that there seemed to be maybe some disagreement about the fact that it was an advisory group, and that they may want, the committee themselves feels like the events, so it's something to think about over the next 2 weeks, because it'll probably come up in the meeting if folks do show up, that they thought their role should be stronger than advising the VSO, that it should be standalone from the VSO as relates to event, and that will take some time to think through, so.
That sounds like a healthy discussion.
Yeah,
And I
That'd be
think-
part of a health, I just want
Yeah.
to
I think
tee it
it's
up.
worth noting. I mean, I think there are many communities that would really like to have such a committee as we've had in place, and I think that.
Great group.
And
They really do.
You see it. I mean, every community does it differently, and I really think that ours does it flawlessly. And I think it's impressive that we get as many people involved in the planning process.
Anybody who's attended the events, it's just, you go away, feeling very fortunate that we have people who have served in so, I mean, all of us, whether it was your father, your grandfather, yourself, your brother, your sister, women in the military, I had aunts who all served during World War II as nurses and whatever, but you go away feeling pretty proud and feel pretty grateful, so. And again, to be fair, the town manager absolutely did say that. The reappointment, or suggested that, of all the members.
Anyway, so the next item on this agenda is the appointment of a Board of Selectmen representative to the Affordable Housing Trust. And so our board historically has appointed one of our members. It is requested that we appoint one, and I should say historically we had appointed a former colleague, Tracy Watson, who I think together with Lori Burzloff have really turned that group into a shining example of what you can do when it comes to affordable housing stock in the Merrimack Valley. And unfortunately, as we've discussed, Selectman Watson left big shoes to fill, and this is just another example of that, and so we do have to replace her on the Affordable Housing Trust with a member of this board. And so I don't know if anybody has a particular interest in this. I think that you would be handheld throughout the process, and I think you'd learn quite a great deal, as we've already learned from having the chairwoman here. I know Selectman Valancourt has specifically in the past expressed interest in this committee.
Take that on. The board's wishes, I'd be happy to do that.
So moved.
Yeah.
Motion made by Selectman Smedili. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Selectman Nobley. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Hearing none. Excellent. And so
Very nice, thank you.
it's not a problem that we didn't designate the term end date, correct? No, I'm here looking at no's. Okay.
Could be March 2018.
Well, it says ending June. Okay.
Yep.
And with that, actually, that concludes the beginning of our agenda. We now move into licensing. Do I hear a motion to?
Motion to move into licensing?
Motion made, seconded by Selectman Nobley. All in favor? Aye. You're in licensing.
Okay, we are now in licensing. So first on the agenda, we have Small Act Farms entertainment license violation. Let me be very clear that this is not a hearing. This is in no way a hearing. This is just at this point a discussion. There's no formal violations that are being adjudicated or anything like that. It's just a discussion. So, Mr. Smolak, what we'd like to accomplish tonight is come to some common terms and come to some common understanding, basically of, why these violations occurred, what we're going to do to mitigate them, and make sure they don't happen in the future. So, along those lines, what I want to say is to kind of kick this off is that we've worked together. This board, yourself, the neighbors, it's all a partnership, right? It's you think about it as a triangle, right? And we're equilateral triangle. We're all in perfect. When everything's working well, we're in good shape. But we all have to keep up our end of the bargains. The town has certain responsibilities. The farm has certain responsibilities. The neighbors have certain responsibilities and need to deal with certain items. But paramount is their ability to enjoy their homes. And we have a licensing. We have entertainment licenses that we've put into effect that have certain end times. And when the licensee doesn't respect those end times, then we start to have issues. And that's what we've had here. In the last couple of months, we've had an issue on June 18th. I believe it was a wedding that went over. It was a Sunday night wedding that went over the 9 o'clock entertainment licensing time. And then again on July 26th, there was an issue with one of the WIM dinner series where I don't know that it was the music from the dinner series or maybe the cleanup crew that was playing some loud music. But I did get a call when I was on vacation in Maine the next day about that. So there was, certainly some concerns here that we need to understand. Like I said, we've come a long way. We've worked hard. The farm stand, you've installed noise dampening curtains. Worked hard, and I know the neighbors. They live up to their end of the bargain. They work with you guys, and when the license time comes to an end, they expect that music comes to an end as well. So what I'd like to do tonight is, first of all, for some acknowledgement of these events, and then maybe you can give us some explanation of why they occurred, and then what you're going to do, what your plan is going forward for mitigating that so that it doesn't happen again, so we don't have to, because obviously none of us want to be here discussing this, you know, we all. this is no-
Good
right?
evening,
Good
Mr.
evening.
Chairman and members of the Licensing Commission. I'm Kate Connolly. I'm here on behalf of Small Act Farms because I've represented them in a number of other conservation and environmental matters and permitting matters before Boxford and this board. And obviously, Michael Smolak from Small Act Farms is with me as well. So I can address both of these issues, and they're both slightly different. The first is really more of a, I think, a miscommunication issue. The June, and you're correct describing both events. The first was a wedding that had requested a 10 o'clock start time, and Small Act Farms fully understood that they had a 10 o'clock, I'm sorry, end time for the entertainment. They asked for it a year in advance, because a lot of times weddings these days are planned at least a year in advance. And we have some correspondence back and forth.
Did they have an entertainment license till 10 o'clock?
Sorry?
Did they have an entertainment license till 10 o'clock?
This is what I want to explain. So if I could just back up a second. They thought they did. They do not have something in writing,
They
which is
thought
what
they
they
did?
should have had. I'm
Oh,
sorry?
They thought they did?
Yes, and I can explain why.
Okay.
I won't read you the entire series of emails. And I agree, we need something better than that. We need, in the future, we do have a few suggestions about resolution of both of these issues, because as I said, they're both very different. And as you acknowledged, one was a wedding, not performed by Small Act Farms, but on their property. The other was a dinner, Small Act Farms whim dinner series, and that's a little, the facts there are different. With respect to the wedding, Small Act Farms Director of Events had requested, a year in advance, had requested a 10 p.m. conclusion time, and she thought she had been granted that. The Community Development Director, she doesn't have a writing from back then, but she provided us, because I asked her for some writings. She has an email chain with the Community Development Director for a wedding that's coming up in October of 2018. Again, a year in advance, trying to get the extension. And in the email chain, she explains to him that we rarely ask for these, and Small Act Farms doesn't ask for them, but sometimes people holding weddings do. In the last 2 years, there have been 3. One was the June 18th, 2 were in 2016. There were none the prior 5 years. So it depends on what the wedding wants to do. But Small Act Farms Director of Events thought that she had the approval. And again, I don't have written evidence of that other than what she told us is her recollection of having gotten that approval well in advance. So she went ahead and entered into a contract with the people that were having the wedding on June 18th of 2017. More recently, she's got an email chain with the Community Development Director in which she references, she's talking about this October of 2018 date, and she says, I have requested this type of exception only 3 times over the past 2 years, which were appreciatively granted. And she cites the 2 2016 dates and June 18th, 2017. And just reading a portion of the reply from North Andover's head of community development, he says, if I remember correctly, we discussed the issue about the ability to grant a time extension on a permit that doesn't yet exist. Did you ask for those previous extensions over a year in advance? It seems that this may have occurred with the June 18th event. I recall that one. I'll talk to the I'll talk to the Selectmen's office to see what their thoughts are, understanding and appreciating the need any client would have for some long-term advanced certainty. So we thought we had the 10 p.m. close
So
for
can I
that
ask a
event,
question?
but clearly we should have
Do we
had.
recognize the difference between entertainment and liquor, right? Because I think what you had was the liquor license and
If
not
I
the
can explain
entertainment.
further, I do understand, and I believe that the Director of Events understood as well. She then talked to the town clerk's office. We want to work with the town. We recognize there was a communication problem here, and I think that's got to be the solution going forward, is that there's got to
I
be.
have to tell you, because I'm now sort of deciding to sit one on the sidelines, I can't, because this is a little frustrating. This is fairly simple, and you're right, it's communication. Licensing authority, you've been in business a long time, Mr. Smolak, licensing authority. Application goes to the clerk's office, comes to a public meeting, they vote it, you get it. This isn't about emails with people who have no
And that's
control
why
over it. I mean, it's a little
I was
frustrating.
about to ask
People aren't
why
even
the
here,
community
for goodness
development
sake.
director was involved in this at all, because he's not involved in this. He shouldn't be involved in this.
It's being asked his opinion. Licensing goes through licensing. If we're going to have a discussion and not do it in a formal fashion, can we at least begin it as an acknowledgement that you know this is a licensing authority and you're going to submit an application through the clerk's office, it comes to a meeting, it sits on an agenda, and it gets voted. This isn't rocket science. An exchange of emails from a person who's responsible for promoting business in town saying this seems like a good idea isn't exactly. So can we have a can we raise the conversation to be intelligent enough to include all the people in this room and not people who would have sent emails who have nothing to do with
If I may,
licensing?
I'm not just talking about emails. I was trying to give the big picture, and I said there's two different set of facts here, but if I can finish on this first one, I'm starting from now talking about, I said, I apologize, but we don't have an email chain or there's nothing in writing. We have communications verbally with our director of events, the town clerk, and more recently, and I started with the more recent back, she doesn't have paperwork from back then. I admit we should have had, these two permits should have been in writing, the entertainment and the license. I'm addressing the licensing one first. She didn't have something in writing. We clearly should have. We know that that's something that we have to do better at, as well as having people on site to monitor compliance with the licenses. The other thing that we will do when we get these two, the entertainment license and the liquor license, in writing, if there's an extension of hours on either one, that will be written on the permit, and we will make sure the police department has a copy of the permits, so that if they get any complaints, and the complaints that have been coming in, frankly, are from a family member of Small Lake Farms. There's a disgruntled situation going on, and we've been dealing with that same family member aiming lights at the tent where the weddings occur, turning loud music on. We're not trying to do something to get back at anyone. The wedding was operating on their own, just on the Small Lake Farms property. Getting back to the June 18th event.
What do you mean they were operating? I'm sorry, I don't understand that either.
I'm just saying that Small Lake
Can
wasn't.
I ask the question? Operating on their own? So, Michael, you had nothing to do with the wedding? They were
No, that's
just
not what I said. The
you said
wedding
they were operating
was
on their
not
own.
a Small Lake event. It was on the Small Lake property, and Small Lake Farms had employees out monitoring compliance with the permits. But I'm stating that I agree with you. We should have had something in writing, and we should have been able to be clearer with neighbors as well as the police department that we had a 10 p.m. close time. And we were not able to prove that because it was not written on a permit, and it should have been. So we apologize for that. We will do better going forward if we request an extension, if we obtain an extension, rather than just assuming that we got the extension.
Can I ask another question? Was the entertainment, whoever was providing the entertainment that evening, were they using the sound system that you provided for them, or were they using their own?
Mm-hmm. They, if I can address it?
Yeah,
Yes, but contractually, they are required to plug into our sound system. And about an hour into their time there, they pulled out some stuff unbeknownst to us. As soon as it was brought to our attention, we not only walked down there, we ran down there because I was very aware of it. Also, we're going to have the police shut them down, and that was probably within 10 minutes of knowing that there was a problem. And, that was certainly, we saw it and recognized it and immediately took care of it because we don't want, first of all, it's our license. We don't want to do it, and it was an argument. It was a rip-snorting argument with them, too. They were not too easy to deal with. But we said, either you stop it, or we'll have the police remove you, period. That was it. Yeah.
So we acknowledge and apologize for the miscommunications on our end, but there was also, the director of events had a discussion with someone in the town clerk's office, and while our person understood that these are two separate events, they had what appears to me when I read the notes of the conversations, it was an unclear conversation where the town clerk thought, and said later, I should have been clearer, I thought you were talking about the liquor license, not the entertainment license. I didn't extend that one, but we thought it had been extended. And clearly, there should have been something in writing indicating the exact times that the events should have ended. It's also interesting to point out, though, that the complaints started coming in at 8:36 that night when the neighbor apparently thought the end time was 9 o'clock. So she was complaining before the end of the event anyway. But going forward on that one, we will, if we need to request longer times, if the people that want to have the weddings there are asking for that, we'll make sure that we've got it clear in the liquor license exactly when that ends, and separately the entertainment license and exactly what time that ends. And as I said, we'll give that information to the police
Just to be
department.
clear, because it seems, because I'm just getting a little defensive, because quite frankly, you're including people in my staff who aren't here, and I would have appreciated that to be somehow known in advance so they could talk to them. But beyond that, the entertainment license is an annual license. It doesn't run, one license is issued event by event,
Right.
The other license is issued annually. It's very clear on the license, and it's provided to Mr. Smolak, as it is for every person who has an entertainment license, the clear delineation of what the hours were for an entire calendar year. There aren't one-offs as it relates to entertainment license. On occasion, when there's been a difference of, say, weekend hours, Mr. Smolak will come as part of the annual license and identify in advance, as part of a December application process, which events, in fact, would have longer hours. It's making it seem like the liquor licenses and the entertainment licenses are done for every event. That is, in fact, not how it's done. The clerk's office is not the licensing authority. This group is the licensing authority. So this is not anything that's confusing. When the license is issued in December for entertainment, it is very clear what the hours of operation are. It is printed on the document and provided to Mr. Smolak. If there are going to be variations for that, it's not done through email or some exchange over a year. It's incorporated as part of board vote in December when Mr. Smolak comes and says, you know, this is what I need for the upcoming year. If for some reason there's an alteration of that, it's got to come back to the board. This isn't really about communication, quite frankly. It's about compliance.
And if I could add to that as well, you know, what was applied for was a liquor license to 10 o'clock, and it was applied for, from what I recall, in a short interval, because it didn't even come to a regular meeting of this board. It was only applied for and approved by the chairman of the licensing commission, licensing board at that time. So it was applied for in a, you said there was years or a year of planning, but that license was actually, in my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, was applied for within a 2-week period of the event, because it did not come to this board. It went directly to the chair, and the chair has the right to approve that on his own if he sees everything is in place.
Do you mean the extension or the permit itself?
My understanding was it the extension or the permit?
License.
The permit itself. So that was done outside of a regular meeting, so it was done within a short interval, and it was approved by the licensing chair at the time. And it was only for a liquor license. It was not for an extension to the entertainment license. So I don't know how
Understood, and I guess I disagree only with respect to, this is a communication issue. You can call it a compliance issue as well, and we'll agree to that, because clearly, from our end, there were misunderstandings about what was approved and what wasn't. And to me, it is clear that if there's an extension, the permit itself has to be in writing. Both of them do. The liquor license and the entertainment licenses need to be in writing. And if there's a request for an extension, it needs to be made timely. And that, if there's an extension granted, that needs to be clear on the permit or license as well. And that was not done in this case. So going forward, we will make sure that the requests are made properly, put in writing, and as I said, we'll throw in sending it to the police department, because that would only help Smolak Farms be able to deal with not having the police have to show up at a wedding if there's actually been an extension of time. And we'll let the neighbor know as well if there's been an extension. Provide them with, and any other neighbors that are interested besides this one, provide them with the close times for any of these events if they're going to be longer than the 9 p.m.
I think that would be appreciated.
What you're assuring us is that
You understand there was a mistake and you're not going to do it again. The only thing I'm a little bit confused with, and I think we got to be clear or it's going to happen again, is, and I think the town manager said it, if there is an opportunity for an extension, say it's a Monday holiday and we didn't catch it or something, it's the only time I can really think that that might even happen. You do have to come before this board. And then the police department does have to be made aware of it. But I think communicating with the clerk or the clerk staff, what could have been polite conversation was interpreted wrong by Smolak Farms.
Sure.
So that, and especially when we don't know who you spoke to at the clerk's office. So we have to be a little careful and mindful of not, but I think the most important thing, and you seem to be doing it, it's a little bit going around a little bit, that you're assuring us that this will not happen again. And if there's any other confusion, that you will immediately contact our licensing chair or the town manager.
Sure.
And just be careful not to assume.
And we have names, but I'm trying not to name people.
No, we would
I'm
really
naming
appreciate that
people.
if you wouldn't do that.
I'm taking responsibility. I'm saying that our person misinterpreted the discussion.
And that's what we need to hear then.
Thank you. And with respect to the other incident, Smolak Farms hires kids, including, in this case, some of the children of some of the people that they had been talking to about this event. And I'm moving to the next event, the July 26th event, which is not a wedding. And that's my distinction when I say a Smolak event. I'm not saying that the weddings aren't using Smolak property and complying with regulations like using their sound system. I just mean there's weddings that have their own, decide however they want to hold their weddings. And then there are the Whim Dinner Series, which are completely Smolak events. That's what this event was. It was a 6 to 9 p.m. It's an event where different chefs come in and they provide food for the guests who paid in advance. They end at 9 o'clock. This one ended at 9 o'clock. The young people who were hired to come in and clean up turned on a radio after hours and were told to stop. I guess our solutions are we either don't hire those kids anymore, or we hire them, but we're going to have to hire additional people to make sure they don't turn on radios and they do their jobs efficiently and quietly. But the event was over at 9 o'clock, and that's when the noise started and the complaint came in. So
they're cleaning up and rocking out.
They were cleaning up and had a radio on, is what they, that's what they did.
The phone call that I got explained that it was well beyond midnight that the music was still being played. So that's a lot of cleaning up, and then that's still a long time for that music to be playing.
Yeah, and I can assure you in the future will not happen again. You can, and I apologize for it, it was not intentional. I myself have gone down there 2 times ago to make sure everything was done in according to compliance of my standards. I said, call me when you're getting done. I went down there at about 11 o'clock to make sure that everything was cleaned up and everything was. And so in the same manner, if we were doing these 12 months out of the year and it was a consistent staff, I think it would be a non-issue totally. But we improve each time, and we've learned a lot from all of this, and I appreciate town manager's comments, and going forward, I think his point is well taken. We'll go right ahead. We'll do it in a written form, not an email to the license. Does that seem appropriate?
we'll come before the board.
You've got to come before the board.
So with the WIM series, what I would suggest is you have an adult supervisor out there with, I appreciate the fact that you hire these kids and you give them employment and everything else, but obviously, we have to take into account what's happening with the neighbors, and we don't want to be here. So, maybe a supervisor or someone to oversee their work and make sure they're not playing music. Get them some headphones.
It's almost like you need, on your contract, you need to have in bold letters the time and music and make it absolutely clear. Will not be tolerated. You will not be allowed to come, whatever. You've got to have that really clear.
And it is on there. It really is on there, and in bold letters or however it could.
You might need to verbally tell them as well.
And we do verbally tell them as well, too, but some people, and that's what precipitated us going down, and that's why I was so mad, because they violated it.
I can respect that. What I'd probably recommend to the board moving forward is although in the past you've given discretion to the chairman of the licensing to sign permits in between meetings, I would not recommend you do that any further. I think it creates the confusion that's, quite frankly, courtesy provided by this board.
I agree.
I wouldn't do it anymore. So quite frankly, there's going to be more pressure on the event staff so that when you come to the board, this is up to the board, but this is my recommendation to completely remove confusion, is that unless it's at a duly noted public meeting and it's approved by the board, then there's not going to be an event. So when you show up in between events, because things, we have one correspondence that took place 18 months in advance for an entertainment license, but the liquor license shows up 2 weeks in advance. That makes sort of no sense to me. If you needed a liquor license but only knew 2 weeks in advance, then how did you know you needed the entertainment license 18 months in advance? It doesn't make sense to me. So from my perspective, I wouldn't have the board do that. I'd say, make sure you make it in on time, and the board will hold its regular every other week meeting and approve the requests, because at least one of these cases, that in-between time, we're being told is partly the responsibility of the town because of that confusion, and I would eliminate the confusion. I would force the event. We don't get a lot of requests. I think it's only Smolak, quite frankly, where we've had requests in between meetings. But we haven't had that in probably 3 or 4 years. But it's the same for everybody.
And Mr.
I'm
Chairman,
not ready to do that. I still think the chairman should have the discretion for some unforeseen circumstances.
I think there's time and place for it when there is a true emergency or.
I agree.
But in a case where, you've got a wedding planned for 18 months, then we should have that in time. I think there's got to be, any process needs an exception, needs an exception to it. But I think we have been very lenient over the years in doing this, especially, for some of our local businesses. But I think we need to tighten that up a bit.
Sure.
And make sure, that we're complying, because again, we don't want to be here, and we don't, the neighbors have, to me, they're paramount in that they have the right to enjoy their property and the right to get sleep on a Wednesday night or whatever night that Wim dinner was, and the music was playing beyond midnight. That's offensive. People have to work and everything else. And,
Right.
So I appreciate the explanations and the acknowledgement of the events. Like I said, this is not a hearing. This was just really to come to a common understanding and understand that we all are in a partnership here, and we all want the farm to be successful. We certainly don't want anything to prevent that success, but we also need to ensure that the neighbors are looked after and are, that their enjoyment of their property is withheld.
Yeah, and we all agree. We all agree with that. We all agree, and appreciate the spirit that you've invited us to come in and discuss this, and appreciate your time and going forward with the standards that we have and a clear understanding, and maybe a little less confusing year, because part of what was going on, we were building this thing, and that went on a whole lot longer, but that's just reasons. It's not excuses. So going forward, we expect to do much, much better.
We'll talk to the Director of Events about going through the process appropriately and getting things in writing, coming before the board if necessary, and letting Michael know if there's a need for him to come before the board for
They should probably not
extension.
allow wait staff and people set up to bring in any type of music, even if it's a radio, because they can put those iPhones and those portable speakers and all that kind of stuff. They really probably...
Or kids with their cell phone 24/7 that are just about virtually impossible to stop.
Yeah, but those speakers are like this big, and you probably should have that as part of your, something to think about.
Sorry, are you all set?
I'm done, thank you.
Are there any
Okay,
other
good,
comments
thank
from the board? So, okay, thank you. So this was not a hearing, but I'm not going to say the next time it won't be a hearing if we have another violation, okay? So I want to, make that clear. That
Point
this wasn't a
very well
hearing,
taken.
And the next time,
And appreciate your time with this, and, I know none of you want to be here this late doing this. Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda are 2 requests from Small Lac Farms for liquor licenses. First, for a Class Inc. Corporate Awards Banquet on Friday, September 8th, 2017, from 6 to 10 p.m. This is a request for an all-alcohol license. And then we also have one for Epsheim Corporate Picnic on Saturday, September 16th, 2017, from 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. These are, again, both all liquor licenses.
Good evening. They're actually repeating clients that we've had for the last 3 years. The Saturday event is actually about 50 children that do attend. It is a corporate event. The Friday night event is a corporate awards party. Also, we've had no issues with this event the last 3 years that I've been working there. And they're both full licenses.
Okay, and obviously you will comply with the
Yes.
sound system
I
regulations.
have nothing to do with the sound system, I just handle the alcohol. But I
right.
do keep in compliance, I do shut the bar at 9:45, and no alcohol is served past 10 o'clock. I do keep everything the way we're supposed to do it. I do get my licenses in 2 months in advance, except for those clients that decide to sit on something that's waiting. I'm working with them for 9 months, and I pressure them, I need a signed contract. Until I get a contract, I cannot process anything. And it's very rare that I actually ever come before the town and ask, we've just got this last minute event. I really try to keep everything 2 months in advance notice.
And of course, all your servers are tip certified.
Yes, we are, tip certified.
Okay, with that, there are no issues with the fire or police other than the tip certification recommendation or requirement by the police department, which you fulfilled that. So do I have a motion on this?
Mr. Chairman, move that the Board of Selectmen acting as licensing commissioners approve the request for one-day all-alcohol licenses for events at Small Lac Farms on September 8th, 2017, from 6 to 10 p.m., and September 16th, 2017, from 12 to 6 p.m. as presented.
That one's easy.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have a request from Merrimack College, a couple of requests from Merrimack College. And these are for all alcohol license for a new facility reception in Crow Hall on Wednesday, August 30th, 2017, from 4:30 to 9:30 p.m., and a one-day malt and wine license for a graduation studies welcome Graduate Studies Welcome at the Rogers Performing Arts Center lobby on Thursday, August 31st, 2017, from 5:30 to 8:30 p.m.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And then the last one we have is from Kate Bibo, I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, of Stevens Coolidge Place trustees request a one-day wine and malt license for outdoor cocktail party on Saturday, September 16th, for 2017, from 4 to 7, and an outdoor concert on Sunday, September 24th, 2017, from 2 to 6 p.m. Sounds like a couple of
Move
nice
approval.
events.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. I have a motion to move out of licensing.
Motion to move out of licensing?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You can give Phil his gavel back, please. Thank you.
Wield it. So actually, we have no old business on the agenda, no new business on the agenda. We do have public comment, if there's anybody from the public who'd like to speak this evening. No? So we can move on to the town manager's report.
Given the heat of the room, I yield the balance of my time.
Thank you.
That'll be reflected in the.
Well, he's yielding his balance. How about from folks around the table, any Ask the Manager
Nothing.
questions?
He knows nothing.
You can suggest the manager who doesn't have a second iced coffee before the meeting is the problem.
Oh, right. Be all up all night.
So with that, actually, the next meeting date is for Monday, August 28th, 2017, in the same room. And that being said, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
And I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Right.